On today's episode of Gathering the Kings.
Young, dumb, and hungry is what I was. Didn't realize the magnitude of potential failure or potential loss. A lot of people just think as long as you go do the work, everything's going to be fine. And I know people that work their tail off that still broke every Friday.
Right.
You know, it's understanding the full picture. What's so funny is how you're in business, nobody knows who you are. But when you're successful, everybody goes, well, I wish I could just flip a switch and be successful like that, like he did. Like, y'all didn't see me for the last 8 years, did you? You know?
Yeah. You are listening to Gathering the Kings with Chaz Wolfe, featuring fellow 7, 8, and even 9-figure business owners who have real battle scars from business and life, but have prevailed as the king that they are designed to be. We welcome high-performing entrepreneurs to the stage in order to reveal the real of the real on what it takes to build a successful business today. We dissect the good and bad decisions they've made along the way that give a true and accurate picture of the journey of success and how you too can get there. Through this dialogue, you will learn the value of growing your network and surrounding yourself with power players and kings like today's guest. Grab your pen and notebook because we're about to dive in.
What's up, everybody? I'm Chaz Wolfe, Gathering the Kings podcast. I'm coming back to you here with another king on the stage today, Mark White. My brother Mark, how we doing?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm wonderful. It's freaking Monday. Is that how you feel about Mondays too?
You know, it's just the start of another chaotic week, looking for another Friday every Monday. But
there you go, right? Another chance to.
Here's a lot better weather than we had last week.
Oh yeah, honestly, for the people that are listening, not viewing. First off, if you are listening, cool. But you should check us out on YouTube so you can see Mark's background. But Mark's got some beautiful whitetail in his background, and that's what I was thinking about this morning because it's been like 100 degrees here in Kansas City. Literally, walk out this morning and it was cool, and I was thinking about whitetail. So it was a good morning, Mark.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, tell us what kind of business that you got here. You've got quite a bit going on in your world. You said chaotic mess, but tell us what kind of business or businesses that you've got going on over there, and we'll get rolling.
So my main source of income is I'm partners in a commercial construction company. So we're based out of West Tennessee, and my partner and I purchased this company in 2010 against all odds and against all recommendations by friends and family. Everybody thought we were crazy. And if I had it to do over and know what I know now, I probably wouldn't recommend myself to do that. So we purchased this company in 2010. We were college roommates, best friends. We were both in the landscaping industry prior to that and had no experience in commercial construction. And so that business has been flourishing ever since. So throughout the process, we've made relationships with other people, and now we're part owners in a commercial development company that we're the sole contractor for.
Sure.
And then my wife and I along the way have kind of bought rental properties and have a short-term rental with a condo at the beach, and then I've got my hands in a few other businesses that some of them I'm trying to keep under my hat because can be a conflict with other contractors because we do subcontracting work in some instances.
Right. Yeah.
But, just make calculated risk and go for it. That's kind of been my motto.
I love it. I love the diversity, but also how you said that, you've got one main focus and you have had for a while now. And obviously over the course of time, relationships. I also love that piece that you said, relationships of what have stemmed some of the other opportunities. I want to get into a little bit of your story, but you've said several things that are super interesting already, especially that you wouldn't recommend it to yourself again. I think it's funny because as entrepreneurs, if we knew what we knew ahead of time, oftentimes we never take the risk. It's too much for our brain to fathom, until we actually get in it, and then you can't go anywhere. And so it like forces you to figure it out. Is that in essence kind of how you feel about it as well?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, young, dumb, and hungry is what I was, and didn't realize the magnitude of potential failure
Right.
or potential loss. And so all I knew was work hard and it's going to work out. And yeah, I mean, now anything I get into, I'm a lot more calculated,
Right.
a little more conservative. But yeah,
Yeah.
my partner and I, we had successful landscaping businesses, but we wasn't real cash heavy. So when we bought this company, we barely had enough cash to put into the company to make payroll, and we were having a hustle with our existing business. So we kept our landscaping companies, and I kind of ran that side of it, and my partner kind of helped head up the new construction, and we kept on one of the owners of the company to assist us the first couple of years.
Sure.
And I remember many Thursdays, Randall giving me a call like, "Hey man, can you go collect some money from some customers? We got payroll to make tomorrow."
Yeah.
And I was literally, running these really fast paced landscape jobs just to try to pump as much money out of those. Because in construction, you do it 30 days worth of work, then you're on 30-day terms and sometimes even longer than that. So you may have to float a job for 60, 90 days before you see a penny of it.
Right. Yeah.
And our accountant told us we needed $200,000 in our account. We looked at him like, what? And, and now that's a fraction of what we keep in our account now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of wisdom here, not only just the prudency of building something so that way when things do go wrong, inevitably they will, that you have a reserve. Let's talk for just a quick second. I'm going to come back to you and your deep-seated why. I always ask that first, but I'm going to pause here because I think we're on some really great stuff. Like in the midst of that, you being scrappy, basically, right? Like I don't have the 200,000 that my CPA suggested. What I did have was some energy and some hunger and some figure it outness, whatever word that is. Help us understand how you made it through, because what you're saying practically that you don't make those types of decisions anymore because things are going to come up. How does the guy listening right now who's in that sticky get out or get through?
Man, you just got to be hungry, and aggressive and I see so many business people that want to be successful, but they want to also go home at 3:30 in the afternoon or 4 o'clock. When I was young, and I probably sacrificed family time a little bit more than I'm proud to say.
Right.
But I put the extra effort in. I would go home, do the family thing, get the kids in the bed, and then work on estimates at night, work on billing, whatever I had to do to make it happen. And so you just have to do whatever it takes. And, now I'm at a point that I have all the proper managers and the proper people in place. If I want to just walk out of this office right now, the wheels aren't going to come off.
Right.
But as long as you are the one that's greasing the wheels and you got to keep the wheels on,
Yep.
You just got to make sure stuff gets done. So for that young business person, just do whatever it takes. And you may not get to have the weekend off. You may have to work this weekend. But I did that. I was very fortunate. I did that when I was early in my marriage and my kids were very, very young and it wasn't a big deal. Now I coach all their ball teams. I'm involved in everything. But it took me 10 or 12 years to get to that point.
Yeah, I think that's a good timeline, as far as well, first off, the reality of doing whatever it takes. That's a little subjective, so I want to dive into that a little bit, but doing whatever it takes consistently for a long enough period of time to where then there are systems, people, a machine that's working and not just you, is what I'm hearing you say. As far as whatever it takes, define that for me a little bit, because man, I've heard it there. I've read it in books. I've read it in audio or listened to audiobooks, podcasts like you saying, I got to do whatever it takes. I used to wear a wristband that says I'm committed, whatever it takes. What does that mean to Mark White?
Oh, growing up like I did on a farm, you may have to be the CEO, the secretary, the accountant. You may have to go change the transmission in a truck because you're trying to save a little money. So at the end of the day, whatever it takes is just exactly what it is, whatever it takes. And
Yeah.
I guess the easy part for me, that's the hard part for a lot of people, is I understood finances. And so a lot of people just thinks as long as you go do the work, everything's going to be fine. And I know people that work their tail off that still broke every Friday. It's understanding the full picture.
Yeah.
So to managing the money, the whole process. So
Yeah.
early in the career, whatever it takes was just wearing every hat of the company.
Yeah.
Whatever hat needed. But don't be afraid to delegate those things that's very easily delegatable.
Yeah.
If that's even a word, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, I see so many guys that'll step in front of their employees and do the grunt work because they wasn't doing it right.
Right.
Well, take 5 minutes and show them how to do it right, and then you move on to the next task, or you move on to preparing the next job.
Yeah.
And so many people say, "Well, I'm not as efficient." Well, sometimes growth of a company has so many levels of inefficiencies. Nobody's ever going to do it as good as you will.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you hire those people and you've got them, sometimes it may take 2 or 3 people to do the volume of work that you could do by yourself.
Yeah.
But
That's
you're
true.
never gonna grow if you don't go through that process. And
Yeah.
so, I tell people all the time, like when I was landscaping, sometimes it took, me and one guy could go out and do a job and make a good living, but it took me having 4 employees before I ever got to the point where I could step back and go, give direction and still make the same money. And then once I got above that, then it was more than what I could do on my own.
Yeah, it's so true. You're really talking about a very key break point. I want to dive more into that. You said something a second ago that I want to hit first, and that was that you grew up on a farm. And I think that anybody that grew up on a farm or grew up in a small town even realizes what you just said, which was, you know, you see, like I've seen my grandfather and even my dad, who's not necessarily a farmer but small town veterinarian, multiple clinics. He's got a herd of cattle and some farm ground and stuff. But I see him do all the things, all the hats, because it's whatever it takes. Like that's that way of life. And so I recognize that, and I think that the listeners can as well. So my question is, but then quickly you were like, but you got to delegate, and so you got to be willing to do it all, but then you got to be willing to give it away. And so tell us about that transition real quick here, and I'll lead it right into that break point that you're talking about, having more employees to be able to really grow. What's that break point of taking it all, doing whatever it takes, but then also being able to delegate it out?
I can't think it's to the point when you start to gain more work than you can handle. So when I was early in my career, I'm scrambling to get every job I can and pay the bills. But once I got to the point where I had more work than I can do myself, that come the point I hired somebody, and then I hired somebody else, and it was just a slow process, and it was tough. And luckily, along the way, I've had some key people in my life that I was able to delegate to. Not everybody's still with me today, but they were, and a lot of people are still I have a good relationship with and good friends with. But I had really good key people throughout my career that were helping me with that growth and be able to hand that off. And obviously different levels of different types. It was the guy that could run the skid steer on the job site, so I could be answering the phone and not, stopping the skid steer every 5 minutes to answer the phone.
Right.
To the point of having an office manager and just, I mean, it's just a little growth. And what's so funny is how you're in business, nobody knows who you are. But when you're successful, everybody goes, well, I wish I could just flip a switch and be successful like that, like he did. Like, y'all didn't see me for the last 8 years, did you?
Yeah.
But that's just being able to hand that off it's tough. It's probably one of the, other than firing employees, it's probably the toughest thing in my career is delegating and giving that away.
Yeah. To your point, it's the only way to grow. Going back to your other point a few minutes ago about, okay, so, you could do the same work as maybe 2 or 3 people, and it even took maybe 3 or 4 people really to like get you fully to the next level. I find a lot of entrepreneurs get stuck right there because two things. One, they just can't wrap their mind around why these three or four people aren't as productive or maybe as good as they are. Like it's hard for them to process in their brain. Why do I need four people when if I got rid of all of them, I could pretty much do all of this by myself? Not calculating all of the hats and whatever it takes and the weekends, and they're small minded in that way. So it's tough to go to that next level and go, well, if I brought on 5 and 6, then I could really go to the next level. It's tough to get to that place. But then also just from a funding perspective, like you're in growth mode and I'm paying 3 guys to do the job that I was doing by myself. And so from like a finance perspective, I'm thinking, well, geez, and you want me to hire 3 more? Give us a little bit of navigation through that time frame for you.
Yeah. So that growth phase, honestly, is the toughest because there's a hard decision. Do I just scale back and just do it myself and still make the same money? And,
Right.
But my situation was I always wanted more. So I was never satisfied. And I mean, my wife's asked me many, many times, when are you ever going to be satisfied? And I'm like, why? To me, it's about the thrill of the hunt, what I can achieve. It's not about the money. I mean, the money is a byproduct of what I do.
Yeah.
And it's a nice byproduct, but a lot of times it's more about satisfying customers and doing what I tell people I'm going to do. And then in the return, it's been good financially. But that growth phase, and I know a lot of people that couldn't get through that. They tried it. They hire a couple people and then they get frustrated with them and just say the heck with it and go back to, running everything themselves and scaling down. And I was probably at that point whenever I bought the construction company. So I was kind of forced into that next level. I had probably 4 employees. I was able to go work on the job till noon. And then I'd say, hey guys, y'all get to this point by the end of the day. And I'd go bid jobs, do that thing. And then when I bought the construction company, it forced me to instantly double in size with employees and volume.
And it forced you to think differently.
Mm-hmm. So, and I had a partner, and then we gained a partner, and we felt like we had to, at least do twice as much.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that you're spot on. You said a few minutes ago that you weren't done. I'm not done. Well, I'd be satisfied. I'm not done. And so we have this phrase inside of Gathering the Kings peer-to-peer mastermind that we're grateful, but not done. And there is a unique perspective to be able to slow down enough to be grateful, be able to take, a smell of the roses, if you will, at the current stage that you're at, but then also recognize fully that zero chance I'm stopping here. What are your thoughts on, your successful trajectory in multiple industries now and a very large commercial construction company now? It's like, surely there's been times along the way where even though that driving force on the inside of you that maybe your wife was like, oh yeah, he's at it again, because my wife said the same thing, but there was maybe a quiet moment where you were grateful, like, oh man, I like looking back, but then in that same thought going, but I can't stop here. Do you have one of those moments?
Yeah, I mean, I had a business consultant in here not long ago just looking over some things, and he said, I'm scared to walk out of your office. I'm afraid you might start another business if I'm not looking. Because one of the things in this line of work, and once you are successful and people notice that, I feel like I'm drowning in opportunities from time to time.
Yeah, that's right.
Because people throw stuff at you left and right, and so you have to be very calculated. So, I mean, I'm very fortunate to that, but everything I do is an extension of the company that I have. So if I'm diving off into another business, it's because one of my current businesses is an asset to that and can make it an easier way to be successful. I'm working with some guys right now. We're partners in a company, and we're fixing to start building storage facilities, storage units. I'm a general contractor. I have my own concrete crew. So as a general contractor, we're a large contractor, but we also self-perform concrete and masonry and some other trades. Well, guess what's in storage units? A lot of concrete.
A lot of concrete.
I kind of get to have my cake and eat it too, keeping our costs at a minimum and being able to supply one business with another a bit of revenue. So,
Yeah.
and even in the rental business, I get to use some of my construction employees on their off time to go work on some of my rental properties.
Yeah.
So everything I do is calculated, and it's an extension of what I already have. So I'm not just diving off and buying some crazy business that's off in left field in another state, but
Right.
everything is an extension of what I've already do.
What's some of the calculation that you've taken around some of those businesses that you have that are secondary or even tertiary to what you currently do mainstream? Like when you're thinking about starting this next one and it has a connection point like you're just describing, is that is there a calculation of does this industry work, or how much does it affect, or how much does it take me away from my current business? Or even going back a little bit, when you started the very first offshoot, was the current business at a certain revenue point? Did you have some sort of a like guideline around, I don't want to be distracted and have something else going on? Or you just kind of went for it? Like, give us a little bit of that.
Well, just kind of what you said about what is it going to take away from this business. So as long as it's not going to take away, like if I buy a rental property, it's calculated that when I bought my first one, it literally paid for itself. And then I bought my second one, bought my third one. They were all paying for themselves.
Right.
And I know you hear Dave Ramsey say, "Well, your rental properties never really pay for itself." Well, if you manage them right, they do. And the key is not take too much out of my pocket to be able to grow those.
Yeah.
And then later down the road, when I would buy a rental property, it might not be as good a deal, but I had 5 other rental properties that were cash flowing.
Right.
So now, I probably bring in $150,000 a year in long-term and short-term rental.
Yeah.
And I've done that with very little out-of-pocket cash, just because I took that calculated risk.
Yeah.
My partner and I funded a new business venture not long ago. I'm not going to say too much about it because I want to keep it on the down low a little bit, but we had the right person to manage that company, and he had the knowledge and the contacts in the industry, and we've had to provide a little capital, but it's killing it. You just got to know your market. You got to know what's available. You don't go open up a shoe shining shop and everybody's wearing sandals.
Right.
You just gotta know what the market, what's available, and know you're not getting into something with low profit margins or a high input costs. So what I'm really looking for is low input costs with high profit margins, which who's not, I guess, but.
Yeah, but to your point, that you're more fierce about calculating what that looks like and whether it's worth a little bit or a lot of bit of your time or money.
Yeah. You just got to figure out if it's worth the time, and now I have less time and more money. Used to I had more time and less money,
right?
So I could put the time into the early investments, and now I can put more money in. I'm looking for more investments that take more money and less time.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's funny how you say that the opportunities, sometimes you drown in them the more successful you become. I had 2 or 3 people in a Facebook or Instagram DM pitch me an opportunity just this weekend. And people that I currently know, they're not just like random, spammers, but people that I actually know. They reached out, "Hey, I'd love to get your opinion on this. I'd love for you to da 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 da." And both of them, I'm like, "Hey, good for you, excited for you, but I can't be part of that." And it wasn't because I didn't wasn't excited about their business, or I just I got these things going on over here, and that is not in the lane that I'm going. And so, best of luck to you. And so it sounds hard, or it feels hard to say no now, really, especially when you're younger. Saying whatever it takes is kind of saying yes to everything, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I had somebody pitch me something a while back that was easily could have been a successful business, but it was a high input cost and a high input cost of time.
Sure.
And I was like, look, it was going to be a long-term play. It was probably going to take several years to become profitable. Like at my point in my career, I'm looking for a residual cash flow. I'm looking for somewhere I can put my money, invest in something that's going to give me a return and not take forever, or at least not cost me anything. If it's going to take forever, it needs to pay for itself along the way.
Yeah.
So it's just, For the early business guy, go beat the bushes and work, get it out of working and make the time. But then once you get the money, you gotta kind of be a good steward of that money and put it in the right places and what I'm trying to do is create, generational wealth. That's where I'm at. I've made it. I could retire tomorrow if I wanted to. I mean, I wouldn't be a wealthy retired person. I would be able to survive but now I'm at a point I need to figure out a way to get to that next level of generational wealth.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's an exciting thing, actually. I talk about it quite a bit. I find myself I find myself a lot of people that like to talk about it, but not actually a lot of people are building the framework to actually have generational wealth, which is, obviously multiple assets, but then there's ways to protect it. And, there's a lot of money in attorneys and CPAs that have to go into that. I actually had a guy on the show probably over a year ago, and he said he not only does he know the number, but he's built the entire plan, CPAs, attorneys, everything, for 4 generations. And he's got it all like it's like a blueprint. Just follow this 4 generations and we're wealthy. Not we are wealthy, but the wealth will stay is probably a better way to say it. And so why do you find yourself interested in generational wealth? Why is that a thing as opposed to giving it away or whatever else we can do with money? Why is it important for you that the White family for generations continues?
I don't know. I want to leave my kids something. I'm like most families in this situation. I don't want to put it on a platter, but I want to give them opportunity.
Yeah.
Like my dad, for instance, he's a farmer, and I could still be there working on the farm, probably living fairly modestly. But over the last few years, I started buying farmland around my dad. So hey, if one of my kids want to farm one day, they're not going to have to sacrifice until they're nearly retirement age to get that ability. So it's a double-edged sword because success can taint your children if you're not careful. And
Yeah.
I try to make sure I'm trying to get them the work ethic and the understanding of how hard money was to come by.
Yeah.
They think everywhere they go, they just, hey, I want that. And we have to explain to them all the time, not everybody can go on 5 vacations a year.
Right.
Not everybody can do this and do that. And you're not going to be able to when you get a job unless you work hard and sacrifice.
Hey, kings and queens, Chaz Wolfe. I want to talk to you about something that's super important to me. We put a lot of time and effort, we meaning myself and my team, into this podcast, into the content that goes out every single day. And if you have been getting any sort of value or insight from this, we want it to be able to reach other business owners too. So we would love if you would like, comment, share, leave a review, post, share again, all of the things on social media, on all the different platforms, or even on the podcast mediums of Apple and Spotify. We would love to be able to get our content into more hands, more entrepreneurs, so they can grow their business as quick as possible. Together, we are building a community of like-minded entrepreneurs who are committed to growing their businesses to new heights. So let's do this. Let's help each other. Let's help each other grow.
So
Yeah. It's an interesting mantle to pass, right? Because in essence, I mean, I've had this conversation with so many entrepreneurs, even including my dad. Kind of a quick backstory on that is I didn't meet my dad till I was 24. He didn't know I existed. I thought somebody else was my dad. And so small town, like the guy I just explained, small, veterinarian practice, cattle. My grandfather, his father is a farmer and was for many years. So I understand that perspective that you're coming from. And it's like you have this, innate value in work ethic and doing whatever it takes, all the things that we've just been discussing. And we want to pass that along to the kids. Right. But at the same time, you are producing already a completely different life. Your kids are growing up way different than you did simply by the success that you've already had. And so it's like, how do I balance this? How do I balance the experience that they have in life? They're not going to go through the same things that I did or that you did, but I still want to be able to help them think through situations like that. What would you say to that? How do you help your kids think through situations?
Yeah, I mean, my dad, just basically made us work. and and don't get me wrong, he's a successful farmer, but he wasn't very transparent. He didn't give me a roadmap. When I went to college, they just basically said, "Hey, it's over there," and I went to college.
Right.
To give the roadmap of how I got here doesn't even make sense because I went to school and got an ag degree, and so for me to try to I just got to be very transparent and communicate everything I possibly can to my children.
Yeah.
I got to get away from don't just say because I told you so. I
Right.
mean, you say that when they're little kids and you spank their butt, but I got a 15-year-old, you
Right.
know, and I have to give him a lot of explanation and try to talk him through things. And a lot of times he don't get the answer he wants to hear, but I have to just really, really, really be transparent
Yeah.
and give a lot of explanation and try to just make every chance I get, make it a teaching moment.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're his mentor, right? Like if you're not going to mentor him as a young man, who will? I didn't have that growing up as a young man. And so I can only imagine where I would be today if I had someone mentoring me at 15 years old, helping me understand situations in life. And I think that that's one of the greatest gifts that we can give our children, not just the money piece, but yeah, just situations in life. But yeah, it's how you think about money too. What do you think was a good decision that you've made in your business journey that's just really practical, something that you would do over and over again that the listeners can maybe go apply in their business?
I don't know. That's a hard question because I do so many different things on a daily basis because I wear so many hats. We've talked about my construction company, but I've been kind of the managing partner of Palm Development for the last 7 years, and so it's really hard to say, but basically just being calculated on everything you do. If it don't dollars got to make sense.
Yeah.
Everything you do has got to make sense, and so never bite off more than you can chew from a job standpoint. Early in our career, Randall and I was killing it on everything we were doing, and we had an opportunity. Some really, really large jobs were coming to our town, and we had one of our masonry subcontractors come to us and say, "Hey, we want to bid on this, but we don't have a masonry license." Well, it's easy for us to go add the masonry license to our general contractor's license. So we negotiated with these guys to come to work for us. We made them foremen, put them on these masonry jobs, and it was a father-son combo, had their own business. We put one over one job, one over another. And we got about $2 million worth of masonry on the books overnight. And we were $1 million a year company when we did this, by the way.
Right.
And 6 weeks in, they both said, "This ain't for us," and walked off.
Oof.
Yeah. So we were like, what the heck? So we were very fortunate. We came out of that process and we only lost about $750,000 over that. But luckily, that would have sank most companies.
Oh yeah.
Luckily, I had a very good year building medical clinics that I hadn't gotten to start with. So my partner and I basically worked for about a year for free.
Yep.
And it was the most expensive schooling we ever had in our life.
Oh yeah.
And once we got through that, that was one of those, don't ever do that again.
Yeah.
But it was also a blessing in disguise because we ended up keeping that masonry division, hired the right people, and we still do masonry today. And it's a very profitable endeavor. So it's one of the worst decisions I ever made that turned into a long-term play. So, that's kind of one of those, just keep grinding and, hopefully it'll work out. I'm not going to say if you grind, it's always going to work out because it don't, but luckily we make that happen. So,
yeah, it's interesting how you tell the story because you're right. Just because you grind doesn't mean it works out. However, an optimist, which clearly I can tell that you are, I recognize a fellow optimist when I see one, but an optimist thinks, well, it doesn't matter how the turnout is. It's going to be for my good. I'll either learn a really expensive lesson to your point, or I won from how I thought it was going to go. Either way, I actually win still. One just may set me back a little bit in time, money, or effort. And so, like you said, luckily for you guys, were able to kind of reconfigure things. What do you think, like looking back on that, like, I mean, in the moment you were like, oh my gosh, $250,000 or $750,000 just gone working for free. Like that doesn't feel good at all. But now looking in many years later at one of your profitable, divisions, that's a big deal. Like, and somewhere along the line there, you had to kind of go, let's just do it anyway. Or was it more of a like, crap, we got this set up, we have to do it. And so let's just keep it moving. I don't know. What was it?
Well, we just, it was it was both of those jobs that we got. One of them was a jail. And if anybody on here listening and you're in the masonry business and somebody calls you about doing a jail, just hang up the phone, just walk away. They're not profitable. I don't care how you try. So, but I mean, we were just neck deep in it, and we had contracts, and these things were bonded, and luckily we were diversified. But as far as just completing those jobs, once we got through them, a lot of people would have thrown in the towel. But once we got through them and we kind of had created and built somewhat of a good productive crew, we just continued with the masonry. And being the general contractor, if we wasn't the general contractor already and having our own masonry jobs to go do, we might not have kept that going. But
yeah,
that's one thing about what we do as a general contractor. Even in a down economy, we have that subcontractor mindset. We were landscapers before we become contractors.
Right.
So you could cut my business in half, and I promise I'd still be profitable because I would just figure out how to self-perform more of that work.
Right.
And that's what makes us so aggressive and so competitive in our market, is because we control the schedule and we control the profits of concrete and masonry in our business.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I love, the calculation. You mentioned something a little bit ago about family, and that early you probably sacrificed some of that more than you would have liked to admit to, but now you flip the script on that. My question for you is maybe a little twofold. Maybe you can give us a little bit of then and a little bit now, but I'm a firm believer that you have to be obsessed about family, marriage, the other things, as well as the business. And just like you, I spent many, many years building a business, multiple businesses, and I probably sacrificed some of that. Even though I was saying that it was important, I wasn't applying myself in those areas. And I think there's a lot of people that think that it has to be one or the other. And so I've just subscribed to the thought now that as long as I do whatever it takes, like what you're saying, be obsessed about both areas or even other areas, my health or whatever, that I can do it all. And so my question to you is that back then when it was harder and maybe now when it's a little easier, how are you obsessing practically with your family or marriage or children?
I have 3 children, and all 3 are involved in sports. And so I literally just have to call my wife daily and say, where are we tonight? Where are we tomorrow? I mean, so obsessing, the roles flipped. So in the early days, it was all about the business, and I just try to be home for supper. Now it's totally different. So probably 6 days a week, we have somewhere to be on a schedule. At least one kid, and there has been nights where we had 3 different places to be on the same night. My daughter plays competitive softball, competitive volleyball. My oldest, he's not hardly as much. He's just playing some baseball. My youngest is 8, and he's playing fall football, fall baseball. Just so it's somewhere all the time, and so basically, I just make sure I'm involved in everything they do. And I mean, I was my daughter's softball coach until a couple of months ago, and I decided to let that go so I can focus more on her as an individual and less as a team.
Sure.
But my business got to the point where I can do it in such fraction of a time. I can do it from home.
Right.
Our development company, a year and a half ago, we hired a lady to be the CEO of that company. So I don't have to worry about signing letters of intent and purchase agreements and reviewing site plans I'm actually missing a meeting right now with one of our customers she's got it handled.
Yeah.
So now I manage everything from a 30,000-foot view. And the only thing that I really dig in the weeds with is when we land new customers, and I kind of cultivate that relationship.
Yeah.
So that's what I really focus my time on, is cultivating those new relationships in our business and managing everything from a 30,000-foot.
Yeah, I appreciate that kind of like linear like progression, I guess. All right, Mark, you said a few minutes ago, when in the early days, you were just trying to get home for supper. Give us just a little picture of that, because I know what that feels like, when it was just all I could do was just to get home for supper and be with the kids for a little bit of time before they went down to bed. And then I went right back to the office, like you mentioned. And so I'm sure that there's a lot of early business owners listening right now that are in the same situation, and they either feel bad about it, or maybe they don't. I don't know. Maybe their wife's on them, or maybe their spouse, whatever it looks like. So for you, give us just a little insight. Just peel back the layer just a half second. When you like rushed home for supper, what'd that look like? And what were you doing specifically with the kids to, be intentional with your time, or maybe time with your wife? What'd that look like?
Well, I mean, fortunate for me, in those days, my kids were young. So we weren't, at sporting events, and where most folks go work their 8 to 5 job, I was working 6 to 7. Basically, I just try to get home every night in time to have supper with the family and at least be there to get the kids in the bed. Many nights spent in my home office after they went to bed, taking care of the business side of the work. So work all day, spend a few hours with the wife and kids, and then work an hour or two before I go to bed. So that was the early days of business. And then just fortunate, my life and my business lined up. As my kids grew, so did my business. So as my time become more free at work, I was required more at home. And things are done. Was that planned? No, I was just very blessed and very lucky for that to happen. And probably wouldn't have survived working like that my whole career, because if I wasn't any good at it, I probably would have failed and moved on and went and worked for the man, I guess. But
yeah,
but
we both know that there's zero chance that would have happened.
Yeah, and that's what happened with that opportunity for those masons. They work for themselves, and they come to work for me, and they wasn't used to answering to somebody. I get that.
Right.
It was a mistake on both our part, but I would never punch a clock ever again in my life. So,
yeah, no, it makes sense. To your point, though, there's some people that aren't made for that, and it doesn't mean that that's any different or better. It just means that the people listening here are like you and I, and that's fine. We're going to figure it out. It's just going to look a lot different, and probably going to have to work harder, differently, more committed in a way for probably a longer period of time than we're comfortable with, if we're just being honest. I got one last question here for you, Mark, as we wind this thing up. You've had just, years of experience, multiple industries of experience now, and success. If you had the chance to whisper to the younger Mark, tap him on the shoulder, you whisper in his ear, what do you tell him?
I've heard you say this to many people on your podcast, and I've yet to come up with that answer. So I'm going to try my best, but if I had to just whisper to my younger self, I think I would just say, stay motivated, stay engaged in the business, and don't give up. Because there's been plenty of times along the way that I wanted to give up, but I think too would be more calculated. Even though I've been very successful, there's like that time with taking those projects. Since then, I've had opportunities to take really big jobs, and we bowed out. Here I am doing $5, $10, $15 million jobs, and we had an opportunity at a $40 million job, and they wanted us to bid on it, and we were like, in the ninth hour, like, no, we're not ready for that.
Yeah.
When a lot of people would have took that opportunity if they could have got it.
Yeah, no, I totally understand where you're coming from. When you're saying that you have an opportunity at a big project and it's difficult, right? It's difficult to say no, especially when you get a little excited. I mean, you're a winner. Like you said, I don't, I'm committed. I'm not done. And so why do you think ultimately you did turn that $40 million project down?
Just because I knew I didn't have the staff to give them a good product. You know, I was
Yeah.
going to have to grow my staff too fast. I mean, growth. I mean, we went through the ridiculous growth in our business. You know, I think we did 1.4 million our first year in 2010. We did 2.8 the next year. You know, the first 4 years we was in business, we grew by 100%.
Yeah.
Which in that realm of 1 million to 10 million is not a big deal. It really isn't. But when you get to that 20, $30 million, and we've even approached the $40 million mark. All right, we're at a different level now.
Yep.
And so we're at the level we want to stay. And one of our senior project managers hit us up like, I thought y'all wanted to grow. And I'm like, no, we're good. I mean, there comes a point when you gotta make good with what you got. You got to understand the sizes of the business and where the profitability is, because there's growth phases where you're literally going backwards if you're not careful.
Mark, that's amazing. Thanks for sharing. How can the listener get in touch with you? If maybe they're an entrepreneur, they want to just connect and talk business, or maybe they want to reach out and do a deal. How can they find you?
Well, I've got a couple websites. So our construction company is bargerconstructioncompany.com. And then my development company is palmdevelopmentpartners.com. And of course, you can find me on LinkedIn or Facebook. But our construction company, we specialize in, you know, anything what we call blueprint projects, you know, where the architects are managing the projects. We're doing colleges, churches, high schools. I'm fixed to start the high school football stadium for the local high school. And then and in multiple states, we do single tenant buildings. So I do urgent care clinics, autism clinics, mental health facilities. But we, as a development company, we go into markets, we acquire the land, we negotiate the lease with the client, and then we build them their site specific building. So I've done probably 125 projects like that over 9 states in the last 8 years or so. And so if you're a business that need a real estate partner, we can be that avenue. Been very fortunate to have some great partners in all aspects. You know, good Christian, like-minded people that I'm in business with.
Mark, thanks again for being here on the show, brother. We wish you nothing but success and blessing in all that you are doing here in 2023. Thanks for being here, man.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Gathering the Kings today. I hope that you were able to pull out a few nuggets to go apply into your business right away. More importantly, though, I hope that you're realizing that it takes more to be successful than just being by yourself, doing it all on your own, carrying the weight all by yourself. What I have realized, not only in my own journey from multiple businesses and multiple different industries, and now interviewing over 200 or 300 other very successful 7, 8, and 9-figure business owners, is that it's tough to do it alone. And so Gathering the Kings exists to bring together successful entrepreneurs. In fact, we are putting together 1,000 kings, specifically who are grateful but not done. We're intentionally assembling kings who fight tooth and nail for their business, family, and communities. And here's what we believe, that in the pursuit of excellence in those areas, that it ignites within us the responsibility to govern power and forge a lasting legacy. So if that relates and resonates with you, and you know that you need people around you, sharp, qualified, other very successful business owners, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. I want you to take a look at what we're doing and see if it makes sense for you to be part of our pursuit to 1,000 kings. Talk soon.